How come there's no squig flyers? I mean, I know the phrase when pigs fly, but it does kind of seem like it'd be a pretty orky thing. Wow! Welcome back to the Railways Go Fast. Old Big Mek here, and it's time for the last of our initial brackets for the Mork Madness Challenge. Ha! I finally remembered it. That's right, we are taking a look at 64 different orc units to determine who is the orkiest in 2025 on March Madness college basketball style. Let's get into it! Greetings. I am sure most of you watching this have watched the other three brackets already on our March Mork Madness. We had Mork Lads, Gork Lads, and Mork Vehicles already, narrowing down 16 contenders in each field to a Final Four. We will then take the 4 Final Fours from the 4 brackets, mix them all up, and do a 16 unit shootout championship bracket for the final video. So this is indeed the final bracket for the final challenge before we get into our championship round. Now, just to catch you up, in case you haven't seen them or you've forgotten where we are at, and again, these are the orkiest units. We're not talking about like the best model kits for converting. That's a whole nother thing that we've done a ton of videos on. And we're not talking about like the best units in the game's meta because, hey, newsflash, the meta changes. It's changed since I started making these videos, for example. This is the unit in orc lore. What is orkiest, along with like how does that lore translate to the basic model from Games Workshop. So for the Mork Lads, our final 4 were the Tank Bustas, Flash Skits, Big Mek with Shock Attack Gun, and Bubble Chucka. Pretty strong for there. The Gork Lad bracket gave us the War Boss, the Beast Boss on Squiggosaur, the Stompa, and the the Beasties. Yeah, sorry, Shooter Boys and Beasties, Beast Nagas. So, yeah, that was another strong one. And then we did the Mork Vehicles. That's where Def Dread and Stompa were, sorry. Def Dread, Stompa, War Bikers, and the Rucka Truck Squig Buggy. So those are 12 of the 16. And now we're going to get the final 4 with Gork Vehicles. And like I do in all of these, I'm going to put this up on the screen so that you can pause, write down your own, make your own predictions before you watch the rest of the video, throw them down in the comments below, and then see whether or not your bracket gets busted or if you are in line with old Big Mek. So here we go. Gork Vehicles, starting in the left-hand column here, we have got Battlewagon, the gun/cannon wagon, so it'd be the gun wagon and cannon wagon variants of the Battlewagon, Grot tanks, Kill Rig, Bonebreaka, Hunter Rig, Truck, Gargantuan Squiggoth. And then moving over here to the right-hand column, we've got Blitz bomma, burna, Deffkoptas, chinork warcopter, Dakkajet, Stormboyz, Wazzbomb blastojet, and looted tank. Now, I know what you're saying. Old Big Mek, all of those things fly except for the looted tank. First of all, how do you know a looted tank doesn't fly? Half the beaky tanks fly these days. So, you know, it goes to show. But also, yeah, you're right. I actually meant to put rock on this one and looted tank on the other one that we did for the Mork Vehicles. Where was it? Right here against the Stompa. But then I didn't, and I don't know why, but probably because a little piece in the back of my brain went, you cannot do Stompa versus looted tank. That's probably your final matchup. So yeah, you're just going to have to roll with my eccentricities and understand that we're orcs, and we're not necessarily going to follow all the rules. But this is our lineup, and let's get into it. All right, first up, we've got Battlewagon versus the Gunwagon/Cannon Wagon. Now, I know those of you that are new to 40K, especially here in 10th edition, are probably confused because this is the Codex, and yeah, you can see there's just Battlewagon, and these are upgrades to this thing by putting the cannon in it, or the kill cannon, or the lava, or the zap gun. However, it wasn't too terribly long ago that they were actually different entries. In fact, here is the Codex right here. I believe this is the 9th edition one that came out with the Beast Naga armor box. And yeah, here you go. You got Battlewagon over here to start with. And then you get into Bonebreaka. And then you turn the page. And there is your gun wagon. So yeah, they actually had different entries, so, which meant you could take 3 of each, right? which not that you would because there's not that many points, and they're not that great, but that is how it was done. Also, the models used to be sold as completely separate models. It wasn't until the very latest rebox of the Battlewagon that they finally put all of the different pieces in it. It used to be your original Battlewagon box was the original open top Battlewagon, and then you had to buy the gun wagon or yeah, the whatever it was. It was sold, I can't remember if they were sold all as separate ones, but there was one that then came with the ARD case with the extra little turret on it with the guns, and then there was the Def Rolla upgrade. And so yeah, it like depended on which box you bought on which upgrade things you got with it, which kind of sucked. So it was really nice that they actually put all of it into one box for the Battlewagon, and didn't really change the price all that much. It's actually a better deal now to get everything in one, which also means that when you buy it, you can either magnetize it to run all the different versions, or you build whatever version you want, and you have a ton of bits left over for Orkiedom. But enough of that. So which one is the Orkiest? Well, when you think about it, a Battlewagon is just a bigger truck, right? And it's can't have some more armor on it. It might not have some more armor on it. In fact, there's actually been kind of some wackiness in 10th edition where you can run the weapons on it, but not technically the ARD case, which is weird because you can't put the weapon turret up on the back unless you've glued the ARD case to the Battlewagon. But, you know, that's Orkiedom for you. You just look at it and paint it purple, I guess, and then the armor isn't really there. I don't know. But classic Battlewagon is classic Battlewagon. Everybody knows what it looks like, even though it doesn't really have a look, because, again, those of you old enough to remember, Games Workshop famously used to say that they weren't going to make a Battlewagon kit, and that every kit had to be a conversion because every Battlewagon was different. It was a very, very orky thing. And here is the only official picture of a Battlewagon in the 3rd edition codex, and as you can see, that is a heavily converted piece of orky awesomeness there. So yes, Battlewagon has a very long and illustrious history. Now, they've always been able to upgrade and take different weapons with them and stuff, but the actual gun wagon / cannon wagon came about later on, and well, is it as orky? I mean, it's just a Battlewagon with even more stuff on it, and usually even more stuff is better, especially for an orc. But if you really, really think about it, that more stuff, taking the gun or the cannon, has always come with a drawback. Either you could carry less boys, which who wants to leave some boys behind? You want to carry as many boys as you can with you. Or it made the wagon slower, and then other kind of things like that. And a little bit, you know, not as dead hard because you got all this extra armor and stuff going on. So, although it's a close one and they are kind of technically the same unit, we got to go with the OG Battlewagon. Which, to be honest, is kind of why I paired those two together, because I didn't want to, like, make all the same points for the Battlewagon a million times and then have it, like, rampage through and end up the final 4 being the 4 different Battlewagon variants. So, yeah, just roll with me. All right, next up, we have got the lovely, amazing Grot Tank versus the equally amazing but positively ginormous Killrig. All right. So for those of you that don't remember, Grot tanks are the greatest thing to ever happen. I will take no further questions. Grot tanks were a fun little addition to the lore where basically either some Grots got together and built their own tanks, or, you know, maybe they paid off a mech with some teeth, or the mech got bored and made little ones because it was funny, and the Grots drove them around and kind of caused mayhem. Forge World made a set of these that were very, very cool, but also very, very expensive because they're Forge World. And then we discovered that these little teeny tiny pullback World War Toons toys were literally the exact same size as the Forge World unit. And a set of 4 went for like $10 on Amazon. I did a whole video on it like 2.5 years ago, which I will link up there. And it was so popular that we actually sold out on Amazon. We made Amazon sell out of something. And then they got another variant in, and we made them sell out of those, and then they restocked a whole bunch, and we made them sell out again. And I'm pretty 99% sure that the whole reason Grot tanks don't exist anymore is because all of us went and bought these things and made our own for an absolute fraction of the cost, and that kind of pissed GW off. But you know what? They could suck it, because these are incredibly fun and cool, because if you leave the little pullback thingy in them, you can put them on the table, actually pull them back, and then just let them go, and wherever they land is where they've moved to, which is classically amazing. So Grot tanks are just the coolest because of the lore in the game and the real-life lore And I mean, come on, it's a Grot and a little miniature tank. The whole idea that orcs get a bunch of these together and put them in a pit and let them fight each other and like take bets on it and stuff is classically orky. Even though it's a Grot driving it, it's classically orky. All right, kill rig. This thing is an absolute monster in every like iteration of the word. First of all, you got this giant squig pig on the front towing the thing, and it's got a trailer with wheels on it, but it also has a bunch of hydraulics and motors and things. It's got powered saws on the side, it's got harpoon launchers, it's got cannons, but most importantly, it has this guy. This is a whir boy who is standing on his whir tower, and it's basically weaponized psychic energy at this point. The kill rig is incredibly cool. It's incredibly deadly in the game. It's also fairly new. There was never anything in the old lore with the Stormboyz or anything like that to have something like this. It is quite orky, but I definitely hear the grumblings about, is it really that orky? Because this is truly just squig pig powered. And this squig pig, well, he might have armor on him, but he doesn't even have any bionic limbs the way the squig hog riders do. One of them is even, V8 powered with a wheel. This guy has none of that. So this is possibly the slowest, least orkiest thing. Now, granted, he's really big and powerful and can totally tow a trailer, but compared to even a Battlewagon, like, he's not going to get to the front lines all that fast. And the whole fact that only B-snaggers will ride on this thing is a bit weird. So it's Grot tanks all the way. Now, I'm not actually going to put this model down. I'm just going to pop this guy off and move this one, and now I magically have a hunter rig, which is in the next lineup against the Bonebreaka. Now, the Bonebreaka is the Battlewagon with the big giant death roller wheel on the front, and that one has always been part of Battlewagon lore. In fact, it's like been one of the original iterations. That conversion that I showed you earlier from the 3rd edition book that Andy Chambers made famously had the big death roller on it, and yeah, the whole idea was that you actually assaulted your enemies with your Battlewagon and you tried to literally squish them with the giant roller, which is orky as all get out. And then you've got the hunter rig. So the hunter rig is the kill rig, only minus the whir boy, which means it can carry more orcs. Except for those orcs are still just standard beast nagas, and all of the downsides to the kill rig still apply to the hunter rig. Now, I want to, again, reiterate, we are talking about the orkiest unit, not necessarily the orkiest model or like favorite model. I love this model. The actual kit is amazingly cool. The battlefield presence is amazing. I love playing it in games. It's really, really functional and useful and whatnot. But pure orkidom lore-wise, this thing doesn't hold a candle. I mean, it's a big, slow squig pig hauling a trailer with no engines, so it's kind of slow. And it's got a bunch of dudes on it and can carry some dudes, but the only dudes it'll carry are beast nagas. You can't put Ludas or Flashkits or anybody else on it, which is really weird and really sucks. You can't even throw a war boss on here. What kind of orky thing doesn't allow the war boss to ride? He's the war boss! Okay, I think we could just all agree, when it comes to lore and orkidom, the Bonebreaka has it by a mile. Now, speaking of gigantic squiggy piggies, the next lineup is the humble truck versus the gargantuan squiggoth. Now, the truck has been around in orkidom for absolutely ever. In fact, we did a whole video about how the orc truck, the humble orc truck, is the biggest glow up that has ever happened in 40k. But yeah, orcs have always had a truck. As long as there have been boys, there have been mechs that have put 4 wheels at least together to make something to carry those boys into battle faster. I mean, you just can't get more functional and more orky than that. It's we want to get into crump and range, so hey, if we put an engine and some wheels together, a bunch of boys can hop on it and we get there even faster. And of course, there is that classic rule in Gork of Morka where the transport capacity of orc vehicles like the truck was literally however many models you could stick on it. It's just when you moved the model across the battlefield, if any fell off, they were then dead. And even though that hasn't been a rule for 20 years and was never a rule in 40k, it has just absolutely stuck in the community consciousness about it. And so it doesn't matter what they've changed the capacity to on the truck over the years, and it has changed a million times. It's really cool that that is a part of the lore. Now you've got Gargantuan Squiggoth. Now that is a Forge Ruled unit. It is the last Forge Ruled unit left standing in 40k for Orkdom, and he's been around for a hot minute, and he is a ginormous squig pig with a howdah on top. Basically think the big war elephants from Lord of the Rings, but Orky style. Extremely cool model, extremely cool unit, but he's really slow. He's just a giant squig pig with a howdah on top. You can't even close combat from the howdah on top because you're 14 stories in the air on a giant squig pig. I love it, but I mean, in Orkidom, it's the truck. It was always the truck. All right, next up, we've got Blitzabomma versus Burna. Yes, I actually do run this model as both. It actually has all of the right accoutrements for both, but obviously with the paint job, this one is much more Burna than anything else. Again, I wanted to put these two together because they are so stinking similar. And while I want like flyers in general to have a chance and, you know, wagons in general to have a chance, that's why they're on, you know, different parts of the ladders. You know, really, when you get two units that are very, very, very close to each other, they should probably go head to head. In fact, I probably should have done that for the kill rig and Hudson rig, but what can I say? I'm an orc. Okay, Blitzabomma. It is a orc warplane that does dive bombs, drops a bomb, and keeps going. Very cool. Burna, same exact thing, except for what it drops are giant Promethean bombs that light everything on fire. So that is just cooler. So it's Burna. All right, speaking of similar units, we're going to do Deffkoptas versus the Chinork Warcopter. Now, for those of you unfamiliar, the Chinork Warcopter is a larger orc Deffkopta. In fact, it kind of existed before the Deffkoptas, designed to bring orcs into the battlefield like a giant Chinook helicopter, which has two propellers on it. Lots of people think this is the model for the Chinork. This is not. This is actually one of the OG Deffkopters. It's metal. Yes, I know it has two blades on it, but trust me, this is just a Deffkopter. This is not a Chinork. A Chinork is gigantic and has transport carrying capacity. These are Deffkopters. They have one guy on them, no matter how many propellers. So that is our lineup. Now, the Deffkopters have been around for a hot minute. They actually made their official debut, which what this model is, in the 5th edition starter box, the Assault on Blackreach, which famously had the Wah in a box, where you got the first 3 Deffkopters. Unfortunately, that was the only way you could get them all the way until 8th edition when they came out in the new Combat Patrol with brand new ones. And then that was the only way you could get them until they finally got their own box release many, many years later. So it's only been within the last couple of years that you've actually been able to buy these by themselves and not bundled in some giant army box thing. That being said, they're positively everywhere. They made a zillion billion Assault on Blackreach sets, and for the longest time, these things were super duper cheap. In fact, people were buying these and converting them to bikers because they were so much cheaper than Warbiker models for the longest time. It wasn't until like some crazy meta in 7th or 8th edition that like spamming these things was really good, and then they got worth a ton of money. It was really, really dumb. But Deffkopters are very cool. It's essentially an orc on a gyrocopter, right? You basically take a warbiker, and instead of giving him wheels, you give him a propeller, and yeah, he's got rockets instead of a big shoot up. Very orky, very, very cool. Now, the Chinork Warcopter is that just bigger, right? It is like a Battlewagon of the sky. You've got 2 giant propellers on it, transport capacity, guns, the whole 9 yards. In fact, I built one in the first episode of our Every Kit is an Orc Kit series out of a Drukhari Raider. That thing turned out super sweet. You should totally go watch the video on that. Which is orkier? Well, that one's really tough. The Chinork is very cool. It is one of the conversions that most people aspire to do if they get into meching. And it's always been a cool presence on the tabletop. That being said, even though it's been in the lore and stuff, it's really a background support piece, right? It gets boys kind of toward the front line, but you don't really assault out of it in the way that you assault out of a Battlewagon or a truck. And the Deffkoptas themselves have always been in the lore as kind of these deep strikers, get behind enemy lines, harass people, just kind of cause a whole bunch of mayhem. And what is more orky than causing mayhem? So it's a really close one, but Deffkoptas take this. All right, we're going to pull our jet back out of the mothballs because it's time to do Dakkajet versus Stormboyz. Yeah, that's a tough one, right? Okay, Dakkajet. Again, I know this is a Blitzabomb and Burna. They're all the same kit, which is one of the best kits in the world. Again, if this was a kit off, this kit is like Final Four at least, but it's not. We're talking about lore. Dakkajet has been around for absolutely ever. It is your basic orc fight-a-plane. amazingly cool, amazingly orky. I mean, what is there to say about it? It is a fighter jet that has an orc in it. They even do things like flying headbutts where they physically ram other flyers and sometimes even things on the ground as a way of close combating, which is, you know, on point. However, Stormboyz. Now, Stormboyz we all know and love. They are orcs that strap rockets to their backs, and they are your jump assault troops. Again, have always been in the lore, have always been in the orc codices, however the heck you want to say it, and they are incredibly cool because they have randomly exploded. In fact, famously in the game Tacticus on a mobile device, when you do a special battle against the orcs that have the Stormboyz, you watch them come in and land, and then sometimes the rocket packs keep going and they jump even more and like keep ping-ponging off things. Sometimes they just explode and pieces go everywhere, which is super hilarious. They were also really, really good in the original Dawn of War. They also had like some great fun animations and things like that on the game. So like they've both been around forever. This is a really, really, really close one, but Stormboyz are just so orky because it's up close and personal, right? Like a Dakkajet is fun and cool, but you are flying around above the battlefield, and unless you're literally in an air war where you're fighting other fighter jets all the time, which would be incredibly cool, it's not as orky as like literally strapping it to your back and flying around so you can get close to chop at somebody. That is incredibly cool. So Stormboyz for the win. Man, my arm is getting tired of holding this thing. But yes, Wazzbomb Blastojet is the last of the plane units, and it is going up against Looted Tank, which, as we covered in the intro, could potentially fly, so just deal with it. All right, now this is not a Wazzbomb Blastojet. The Wazzbomb Blastojet does have the double cockpit, but it's supposed to have the big open one and then the T-tail and like a bigger gun back here and stuff. And it also has a custom force field on it. It is like the Big Mek's personal plane, which is very cool and very orky, especially for Big Meks. But in the pantheon of things, really it's just a specialized flyer, which, you know, again, it's cool. It is cool, but why do you need a force field on a plane? It just seems a little unorthodox, if you know what I mean. That's a great term, unorthodox. Anyways, Looted Tank. Again, for those of you that are a little bit newer to 40K and don't remember, back in the day, orcs always got to loot somebody else's tank. And I don't just mean lore, I mean in the rules as an official unit, looted tanks, looted wagons were almost always part of orcdom. In fact, there was even an official upgrade kit for the Leman Russ to turn it into a looted tank from GW. I can't remember if it was from GW themselves or from Forge World, but either way, you could go in the store and actually buy it and glue it on. It was all designed. It had a separate turret, a different turret on it that you still put the Leman Russ guns in, but it like orcified the turret along with all the other little armor panels and an orc gunner and driver and stuff. It was absolutely amazing. I don't have it. I wish I did. If I could have any model in the world, that is the one I would take right now because it is so stinking cool. But yeah, what is more orky than being like, you know what? In our official rules, we're going to be able to just tank one of anybody's tank just because we want to. We're going to paint that sucker blue and we're going to drive across the battlefield and write, you know, not Umis on it or whatever and just be a tank. It is absolutely cool and amazing. This one is a conversion. This is, again, that World War Toons thing. You get a 1/35th scale version of the kit. And yeah, you could put together yourself a little def to Umis, kill tank, looted tank thing. Got the chrome stacks on there and all that. Yeah, super duper fun. Love a looted tank. In fact, it's probably one of my favorite orc things of all time, period. Like kit, thing to play on the battlefield, idea. Just everything about it is amazing. It's kind of unfair to put it up against all the flyers, I will be totally honest. But also, it's knocking out the Wazzbomb Blastojet, which is like the Big Mek's personal plane, which if you were taking bets before this whole thing went down, you might have had as like my personal favorite to begin with. And, you know, it probably would have been in the Final Four, but I think in this tank, we just roll with it. You've got to go looted tank. All right, that takes us to our semifinals. First up, we have the Battlewagon versus the Grot tanks. Now, this one's really, really, really tough, right? It's Battlewagon. Everything that we love about the Battlewagon is still there. It brings orcs into battle faster. It's got Dakka on it. It's got some close combat-ish. But, the big but, Grot tanks are funny. And part of the whole finding the best orc thing is all of orkiedom, right? We've talked about this on a number of these really, really close ones on you got to have everything. You got to have some Dakka, you've got to have some close combat, and you've got to have some of that orkiness, that fun, that randomness, that hilarity. That's what orcs are about. That's what us players are here for. And there's nothing really random or hilarious about a Battlewagon. There's nothing super orky about it. It is technically amazing. But like in orkiness, it's missing that je ne sais quoi that Grot tanks have. So as heretical as it is, Grot tanks win. Now conversely, we've got Bonebreaka versus the truck. Now this one is even harder. Again, this whole experiment has been a lot harder than I thought it was going to be, which is really hard when you just love every single unit, but really like having to think about it and express what makes it orky has been incredibly eye-opening. But yeah, so Bonebreaka is the Battlewagon again that has the big def roller on the front. Now that is orkier than the Battlewagon in a way that the Gunwagon was not. Remember the Gunwagon, you had these trade-offs that were negative to take the weapons, right? You had to add the art case to it, you had less orcs that got taken with it, had a big Dakka thing, and it kind of changed its role on the battlefield, like, again, not just in rules, in lore, right? Like, your Battlewagon with an art case and a big cannon is going to be at the back of the wah, not at the front of the wah. The Bonebreaker is going to be at the front of the wah. It's got a giant honking roller on it that you're trying to squish enemies with. So it's got way more up close and personalness than the Battlewagon. It also has something very orky about it in that, like, what's the best way to kill something is to literally steamroller it to death. That is cool. Now, truck, again, like we just talked about with Grot tanks versus Battlewagon, very technically amazing. It gets boys to battle faster. It's got a little bit of Dakka on it. It is perfection. It is orc personified, but it's not very random. It's not very orky. It's not, like, in that kind of fun sense. It makes a lot of sense, almost too much sense. And really, if you were an orc on a battlefield and you had your choice between hopping in a truck and hopping in a Bonebreaker to get to the battle, which one are you going to take? The Bonebreaker. All right, next up you got the burna versus the Deffkoptas. Now, we're getting kind of down there on things that fly, and the Deffkoptas are super cool. Like we talked about in their first round entry, they do have that little bit of orkiness, random hilarity to them, where they are deep striking behind enemy lines to cause all sorts of mayhem. But you have to admit, there's something really hilarious about, I'm going to take a jet that flies way the heck up there. In fact, sometimes can even be deployed from orbit, and I'm going to load it with burnas. I'm going to put flamethrower bombs on this thing, and I'm going to dive all the way down to the deck to personally deliver to you some fire. That is some orky dedication. I mean, come on. If you are a flamehead at all, if you love anything burnas and scorches and burna bombs and fire, this is just the epitome of cool. And again, the Deffkoptas are cool, and they definitely have some randomness to them, but they're kind of mild sauce to the, you know, Carolina Reaper that is personally delivering that burna bomb. So burna bomb takes us. All right, and for our final semi-final match here, we have Stormboyz versus the Looted Tank. Now, I did not expect these two to end up have to go against each other. Again, I put very little thought into putting these things together once I had the 4 brackets, like which units were in the 4 brackets, but like where they were in the bracket, I didn't put a lot of thought into because I don't have this pre-decided at all. I am stream of consciousness this with you guys so that you are hearing all of my thought process in real time on what is ORKIEST. I have no idea who's going to win. I don't even have any idea who the top 4 is or anything like that. And I totally expected these guys to kind of still both be standing in that final 16, but that's not going to happen because I stupidly put them in the same little bracket. So here we are. Oof. Man, this is tough. Okay, again, focus on orkiness, right? Let's start with the Stormboyz. They are your basic honkin' boy, which is great. You can't get a whole lot more orky than that unless you're a knob. or war boss, but you know what I mean, right? It's Orc Boy. He's strapped a rocket to his back, which makes him hilarious. He's also effective. He's got sluggas and choppas and gets up close and personal. Doesn't have a whole lot of Dakka. I think they've only ever had sluggas, you know, but you know, when they go fast and they get into close combat quick, do you really need that much Dakka? So yeah, there is that, and they are just incredibly cool looking minis and artwork. Whereas Looted Tank, again, what is orkier than literally stealing somebody else's stuff and pretending it's your own? I mean, that is just the best. And again, in the lore, in the artwork, in the games, you can go play Speed Freaks right now, and you could play as the Looted Tank. And not only can you play as the Looted Tank, it is the legit old school Leman Russ with the different turret and all of the add-ons from the Looted Tank model kit. And so even though I can't afford a Looted Tank model kit, because they go for hundreds of dollars now, secondhand, I can at least go play it digitally, and that is really, really cool. Ah, man, this is so tough. Again, looting something is very orky, and when you talk about, well, what kind of capabilities does it have, it really depends on what they looted, right? They can loot a Leman Russ and have lots of Dakka. They can loot, you know, a Chimera and use it like a truck to get up close and personal. It really was any tank you wanted. And again, if it was still a thing nowadays, you could loot the new floaty tanks that the Space Marines use, or the Adeptus Mechanicus. I've even seen looted Chaos tanks and things like that. So, you know, they were Imperial, then they went to Chaos. The next thing you know, they're owned by an Orc, and the poor little Chaos Demon Engine slash Servitor skull in the back has no idea what's going on, but he's painted red, going faster, and yelling "wah" is really, really, really cool. But here, and again, hear me out. If this was a like best model kit or best unit to convert or whatever, like best modeling opportunity, I mean, hardcore, this would have to be at least a Final Four. But when you talk about orkiest unit, when you're talking about the whole overall package between, you know, lore and artwork and model and, you know, a little bit of like what it does on the tabletop, this is a little bit more Dakka. Plus, it's not really an orc unit, right? They're stealing somebody else's thing. And while it's orky to steal, it's kind of unorky to like keep driving it. I don't know. It's just a little bit less orky than a Stormboyz, than strapping a literal rocket to your back and flying up the battlefield. Again, super duper close. We're talking triple overtime, doinker off the upright, but Stormboyz take this one. Oh, that hurts to say. All right, that's given us our final four in the Gork vehicle bracket. We've got Grot tanks, Bonebreaka, burna, bomma, and Stormboyz. That's a pretty darn good list if I'm totally honest. I mean, you still have a Battlewagon variant on here. You still have a Flyer variant on here. You've got the fun little Grot tanks that cause all their mayhem, and you have the Stormboyz. And again, combined with the other 12 that we started with, that is our final 16. So I will now take those 16 finalists, mix them all up, because you don't want to put, you know, these same four on this bracket. That defeats the purpose. So it'll be one finalist from each of the four brackets in each of the four slots, all the way across, and we will do our championship round to figure out who the orkiest unit is. Now, this has been a whole ton of fun. I've said that I will definitely be doing this again. Obviously, we got to at least do one with named characters, even though Gaz will probably win because he's Gazgul, but, you know, you never know. But doing, like, a named characters one would be cool. But also, my idea being that the next time we go through this, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be the orkiest. We could do, like, the best kit or whatever, but we can also retire whoever wins to the Hall of Fame and just kind of have this thing going on year after year after year, where we've got like the most orky things that we've done through these brackets, which I think is a lot of fun. All right, that's going to do it for this video. If you want to see that championship bracket, make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss that upload and many others. We had a new balanced data slate drop with a new detachment that I have yet to read that I've got to go get all learned up on, and we'll do a video on that, as well as other fun stuff. Obviously, you guys saw me open the Megatrack Scrapjet. We've got to do the Secrets of the Sprue on that, and then build it and paint it and whatnot. So yeah, if you are here for some Orky madness, you are in the right spot. Do me a favor. check out some links down below. I'd really appreciate it, whether it's going to look at our other videos, sharing it with a friend, or getting onto our Discord server, which is always completely free, or checking out our new merch site. And of course, if you're watching this when it's brand new in March of 2025, if you support the channel through either joining Patreon or a channel membership, you are entered to win old Big Mek's Orc Army that I'm giving away at the end of the month. You definitely don't want to miss that. It is a literal ton of stuff, and we're going to have some other prizes as well so that more than one person walks away with something. Details in like a million videos. Just go watch more videos. All right, that'll do it for this one. Until next time. Wagon!